If you've been paying attention, you may have been seeing me on air with 2 or 3 other people for lots of author panels, but this time we're gonna do a one-on-one interview. I hope you stick around for this. This is gonna be very illuminating. You're gonna learn a lot about the author process. Let me introduce this week's guest. I'm pleased to interview one of our Biz Book Publishing Hub's founding partners. Our hub partners are experts who support entrepreneurs along their author journey. Before we dive in, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Today's guest is a powerhouse in publishing and marketing, known for her ability to transform ideas into best-selling books and compelling brand stories. A writer whose stories emanate from market research, she's part word nerd and part data junkie. With decades of experience as a professional writer, market researcher, market strategist, higher education expert, book author, keynote speaker, executive coach, and owner of a collaborative publishing company, she brings a unique blend of expertise to every project she undertakes. She's a trusted guide who works with authors and business books, memoirs, creative fiction, and helping those authors navigate the complexities of writing and publishing with integrity and insight. Her passion for storytelling extends beyond books to all forms of marketing and communications. She works with world-class organizations to craft memorable brand narratives that resonate with customers and drive results to the bottom line. As the founder and president of Silver Tree Communications, she has gathered and leverages data-driven insights to help businesses achieve profitable growth and stay ahead of marketing trends. A prolific author herself, she has written 3 successful books. The first, a poetry collection emanating from her early career as a college English professor. The second, entitled Think Like a Marketer, which debuted in the top 1% of all business marketing books on Amazon. And the third, entitled Commencement, which has positioned her as one of the most sought-after experts on the future of higher education. Her work has been featured in prestigious outlets like Forbes, NPR, CBS, NBC, Business Insider, The Chronicle of Higher Education, CEO World Magazine, and Harvard Business Review. She recently spoke at South by Southwest EDU, one of the most prestigious speaking venues in the world. Her dedication to clients is unwavering. She helps produce high-quality books and empowers others to confidently share their stories and insights with the world. Today, she's here to share some wisdom on the intricacies of publishing and how to leverage marketing strategies for long-term success. Please join me in welcoming my good friend, Kate Colbert. Kate, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
There's so much jam-packed into your intro. I admire you because, like me, you're a multi-hyphenate. There's that
Yeah.
sentence where I was like, and she's done this. And I'm like,
And
yep,
she's done this.
yep, I recognize this. And like, you're like, yeah, we're traveling this world together. This is great.
Don't you
So,
sometimes hear your own bio and think, no wonder I'm so tired?
yeah, and you've done so many things before really committing to this work with authors. I'm actually kind of curious what brought you to the place where working with authors has been like a focus. Before you had the collaborative publishing house and all of that, what started you on that path to now not just being an author yourself, but supporting other authors?
Yeah, it was kind of accidental. And it's interesting because I talk in my marketing book about the fact that I'm an accidental marketer, right? So I started out as an English professor. I really think of myself as a writer first and foremost. And I've done a lot of corporate writing and anything you can possibly imagine smithing some words for, whether it's a highway billboard or a radio commercial or a report about safety in operating rooms or whatever, I've written it. And when I was an English professor at the collegiate level at the beginning of my career, and I've done all of these things sort of along the way, and somewhere along the way, I realized that one of the ways that you can really make money as somebody who's really good with words is to apply that to the practice of marketing. And so it's interesting. My mom actually always knew I was a marketer. Like I was the kid who in the grocery store, like I'd be looking at the new Pepsi can, and it would say, new look, same great taste or something, and I would say, that would be better if it was great new look, same great taste. Like when I was 8, like I was writing new taglines for things and I think my mom always knew that I was a marketer. And I don't think I knew I was a marketer until after I'd been a journalist, a professor, all of these sort of word careers that I had had early in my life. And so just like I was sort of an accidental marketer, I've become an accidental publish her. So my core company that I own is a communications consultancy company, and we've been around for 22 years. And in probably around 2015 or so about 9 years ago, at this point, I had a client we were helping with her marketing strategy. She was a really brilliant physician, neurologist, specialized in headache, and had a really unique approach to how she treated people who had head pain. And she wrote a draft of a book. She wanted to write a book, and she wanted help. And I thought, I have no idea. And so, we ended up going to New York with her and sitting down with CEOs of publishing companies and sort of pitching her to all these people and essentially acting as her agent. And I realized really quickly, wow, there is a lot of pain for authors, right? This was a woman who was really busy treating patients in her clinic, and she had a life, and she had kids and a spouse. And she didn't want to make a full-time job out of trying to get someone to say yes to publishing her book. And it was really painful. And we realized that, wow, there is just a whole lot of rejection in the world of publishing, where you're really just trying to get all these publishing companies. It's like, love me, please love my book. And that I realized was problematic because ultimately her book was a marketing tool. It was no less important or no more important than her company's website, than the way she positioned herself as different from other neurologists in the region, et cetera. And so, it's harder to write a book than it is to design a brochure. But at the end of the day, it's still marketing for a lot of people who are using their book as a business tool. And I realized, how hard could it be to sort of spin up a publishing division? So I sat down with my teammates here at Silvertree, and we asked ourselves, could we learn how to do this? Could we start a business book division? And we did. And we made a bunch of mistakes early on. And then we got really, really good at what we do. And we started really realizing that we had something really special. So, I came to helping authors. I would say if I had to explain sort of the how or why, I would say it's two things. It's through a sense of strategy, right? It's logical for a communications consulting company to have a publishing division because a book is a tactic, right? Also, I did it through a desire to provide service. And I want to just make people's lives easier. I want to take away the stress from authors, and I want to help make the authorship and publishing journey fun, easy, exciting, prosperous. I happen to have some unique skills and some insider information. And as an author myself, I have a lot of perspectives. I just want to take what I know and the talents that I have, I want to exploit that in service of others.
When you were talking about this from a marketing perspective, I think what's interesting and I think unique about what you're doing is that most publishing houses don't have your marketing background.
Right.
And it's been made very clear to me as I've been interviewing people to join the BizBook Publishing Hub and become one of our hub partners. About a third are hybrid publishers, so 15, 17 people. And one of them just said it in the most, flat way. You hire a publisher to publish your book. That's our job. If we offer you anything else, that's a bonus. Hire us based on our ability to provide the end product of a published book. Now, the differentiator then would be those publishing houses who actually have experience with marketing, because a lot of publishing houses, even traditional publishers, they only really put budget dollars behind a small percentage of their authors each cycle. The ones they think are actually going to sell, like, gazillion copies, like an Obama book, sure. Michelle, you want to write another book? We're, like, we got advertising dollars for you.
And even then it's limited, so we consult. Not only do I work with clients who have their books published under the imprints that are part of our publishing house, but I provide marketing consultancy for people who publish with other publishing companies, right? Mm-hmm. And with Big Five. And I think one of the things that some of your podcast listeners might not realize is that even if you're with Random House, Simon & Schuster, Wiley, et cetera, you're going to spend a lot of your own money on marketing. So I have one client who's done, I think, 3 books with Wiley at this point, and his first 2 books with Greenleaf Publishing Group, which is a phenomenal hybrid publishing company, sort of the Cadillac of hybrid publishing companies, as it were, from a price standpoint and what they deliver. And he came to me when he was working on one of his books with Wiley and said, I hate the covers they're designing. Like, they're horrible. Like, this isn't, I don't think this is going to sell books. And so we came up with a strategy for what his cover should look like, and we mocked it up, and he gave it to the design team at Wiley, and they essentially took our idea and ran with it. It was a New York Times bestselling book, and he forgot to acknowledge us in the acknowledgments. We'll give him shit about that. Oops, pardon my French. And you know, he also was spending probably $70,000 to $100,000 a year on his marketing expenses.
That's outrageous, and on that's very top level of what I think people are going to be doing. But I think you're right that every author has to recognize that they are driving the marketing. Like, they have to figure out what goals they have, and they have to hire the people who will help them achieve those goals. But I think first-time authors aren't even sure what goals to set, which is a big piece. We have those conversations with the author panels all the time on this show. I always ask this question: when you were first started working on that first book, what were the metrics you were going to be keeping track of to know your book was a success? And then I follow up with, okay, what do you now think is important? And it's changed so much. It changes so much. So I love how you're here to really, make life easier for people who want to be an author and make that publishing experience go more smoothly. Specifically, walk me through, at what point would you engage with an author? Are you helping them write the books? Are you coming when the book's already a manuscript? Like, kind of where are you in the very beginning parts of the process?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Certainly, authors come to me at different points in their journey, and I do my very best to meet them where they are. But I would say, ideally, authors should be engaging professionals to help them when they have an idea for a book and they've written an outline. That's the perfect time to start assembling your team if you're an author and or a would-be author working on a book, because it's difficult to sort of unpeel the onion and sort of go back in time and try to change things. Folks who are not professional writers can get really overwhelmed by all of the rounds of revision that can be required of developing a really good book. And so getting somebody on board to help you with the idea itself. People do come to me with book manuscripts essentially completed and saying, like, I want to take this to the marketplace. And I literally have lost track of the number of times that I've had to say to people, this is not a great book. I would not put my company's imprint on it. And here's what I recommend you do to make it a really great book. Some people they have the fortitude and the willingness to do that, to roll up their sleeves and do that work. And some don't. And so ideally, somebody who's working on a book assembles a team to say, hey, does this idea make sense? Is there an audience for this? Will people buy this book? Will people read this book? Will people recommend this book to other people? Will this book accelerate my career or my sense of self or make my life better in some way? Is this a realistic dream? I think if you can get trusted advisors on board with you early, I think that makes sense. There's several problems I solve for authors, and they come to me at different phases. I would say, first of all, anyone can write a book, but not everyone can write a good book that's going to change careers or companies or lives. I help them do that. Anybody can release a book. Right? Anybody can get a book out there into the marketplace, right? But not everybody knows how to be an author. Not everybody knows how to let authorship transform their brand and the way that they think about themselves and the way they think about the way that other people think about them. When done right, a book should be career defining or life changing. A lot of people don't know how to do that. I help people figure that out. I would say anybody can get a book on Amazon. It's never been easier than it is now, but not everyone can get it onto thousands of desks or thousands of bedside tables. Not everybody knows how to get reporters at Forbes writing articles on them. Yeah.
I want to go back to that point you made about how it's almost never too early for someone to reach out and start building the team, and how hard it is to figure out what to do once the book exists and it's not a great book. Because I've talked to several authors who've said, I spent years and years working on this book, and then I finally hired somebody, and then we basically rewrote the whole book.
Yeah. Torn apart.
And I'm like, what if you had talked to them 3 years earlier? Like, what would have changed? Could you have moved faster? And also, I love the questions you're asking about, will this make the impact I want it to? Is there an audience for it? Will this drive, attention to the business I'm building, or whatever it is, whatever the goals are. The problem that I think is, because it is so easy to get a book out there, and there are people who will simply publish anything, that you have to be careful who you're getting to ask you those questions, or maybe they're not even going to bother asking you those questions. Part of what I like about what you're offering, and this is part of the vetting process I've had for the Hub partners, is that we work with entrepreneurs. And we understand that the goal of this book is that it's going to help us drive revenue in some way, not directly from the book per se, but by making it possible for that author to now do speaking or coaching, consulting programs, whatever it might be. But it's a danger, because someone else can look at that same crappy first draft and say, great, and then like publish it. And then nothing happens. And I just think there's a lot of people who are being taken advantage of. I think it's hard to find, if you don't know your way around the author world, it's hard to find reputable people. So asking fellow authors what they liked or didn't like is really a good step, which is why reviews matter.
It does. Well, and you know what, Robbie, I cannot tell you how many times I've had an author come to me who had a bad experience with a sort of current or previous publisher. And when I ask basic questions about, so before you hired them, did you ask them to send you copies of other books they've published, so you could lay your hands on them, see what the layout looked like, touch the covers to see if the way they coat the paper does it feel homemade? Is it professional? Did you actually touch and read any of the books they published? Almost no one says yes. And I think, but you're going to put your reputation on the line with this publishing company, and you didn't vet their product. Or I ask, did you ask them for references? Did you speak to any of their other authors before you signed your contract? The answer is almost always no.
Did you have a contract? How about that one?
Oh, contract. So and that's one of the things too. Yeah, we have a very complicated but friendly contract. And I always tell folks when they come on board with us, even if I'm just coaching them through a book, if they're self-publishing and not publishing with us, but I'm helping them, I always tell folks, if you want to speak with any of our clients before we get started, I'd be happy to put you in touch. I have a recent author who came on board with us, and she spoke to 4 of our authors before she signed the contract with us. And all 4 of them, I think, gave her really good advice about how to be successful at doing this with me.
I was on a prospect call the other day, and she said, do you have any references? And what was surprising was I hadn't heard that question all year, and I happened to have a 1.5 minute video testimonial up on my computer that I had been like, oh, I need to figure out where I want to put this. It's been sitting there as like I want to make a new website landing page or whatever. It's been like a to-do item. And I went, yeah. And I was starting to think about who I want to introduce her to. And all of a sudden I looked and I was like, oh, 1 second.
Let me send you
this. I literally just pulled it up and pressed play for 1.5 minutes.
Brilliant.
And then I took it off the screen and I said, would you like to meet anyone else? She was like, no, I'm good.
Love that.
And I thought, I was also felt like she's the kind of person I want to work with, because that's a good indicator that they're being a thoughtful partner in this.
Yes.
Like, they're not just rushing for glory. They want to really understand the outcome. What's it like to work with me, et cetera. So I feel like it makes both of us feel better when these questions are addressed. It's not just for the sake of this author, but also for me as the service provider. I want to have knowledgeable prospects, which is partly why I give so much information away.
And you want to have prospects who actually care about results, right? So you're going to help them produce something really great. And I will say that I've had some authors in my experience who were lovely to work with for a variety of reasons, but who were not particularly motivated, right? So they finish their book, and I've joked about this from stages, but some people put a book out the way people put out the trash. They just want to like get it out there before it starts to stink, right? It's this bucket list. They're checking it off the to-do list. I said I was going to write a book in 2024, or I said I was, and their standards are really low, and then they don't care about getting people to read. And that I will never understand, Robbie. I will never understand somebody who writes a book and doesn't care if no one ever reads it. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But I know that happens in the book writing world. I know it happens in the songwriting world, where people have these collections of material they've created that no one has ever enjoyed. But ultimately, the magic happens between your content and the people who consume it. And you have to go into writing the book and strategizing the book and writing the outline and coming up with the title. All of that has to be thinking with the end in mind and thinking about the reader, because everything you do as an author should be in service of the reader.
So the follow-up to that is that as a new author, or even a person who maybe is writing a new book, maybe you've had multiple books, you can't actually see all the possibilities that will happen when the book is a success. You've had that happen.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to someone on a panel who, it's like, yes, I had a really good idea of how, I was going to write this book and it's going to help me in this particular way. But then it's led to this whole ecosystem of services and offers and products and programs and like, including like, tangible products that he ended up creating. So that's the stuff that you can't see. But if you don't have a plan to even get the first 1,000 books into people's hands,
Right.
how is the rest of it even going to happen? Like you have to have a certain level of momentum and strategy. So specifically, you're getting people through the writing process and the publishing process. Is there a launch piece? Because you know me, I love my launches, and then marketing, or like what's the bridge between getting the book? Is it, I also, I guess I'll back up. Are you getting them to Amazon? Are you doing them Spark? Are you doing other like Barnes and Noble? Like what's the overall level of like publication support are you giving them?
Right. So, as a marketer, I want people to be able to say, my book is available everywhere books are sold, right? So distribution is really important. So yes, we distribute through Amazon's 14 websites internationally, but we also do distribute through Ingram, so that books are available at Barnes and Noble and your local mom and pop shop. And we've got authors whose books are available at Walmart and Target and all those kinds of places. And the marketing piece of it is really important to me. I would say a lot of our authors don't budget for it. So we give, as part of our just general marketing package, we give a fair amount of marketing consulting and advice. And sometimes folks have somebody on their team, or they're willing to do some of that work themselves, or they have an administrative assistant or a marketing person on their team who we can help sort of coach through the process. We do refer a lot of people to publicists. So I had a really great experience with a phenomenal publicist with the launch of my most recent book, Commencement. And so I'm able to sort of share some of that. And we try to get people picked up by some really great publicists. But we really do try to make sure that the book is out there. And in terms of ebook, we're big fans of having a book be distributed wide, meaning your ebook should not just be available in the Kindle store on Amazon. It's a great way to get started with an ebook, but there are countries like Italy and Spain where the vast majority of ebooks are not sold through Amazon. So if your book is not available on, Rakuten Kobo, Tolino, Italia, Smashwords, it's like your book has to be everywhere. And by the way, a lot of people forget, Apple Books is great. A lot of people forget about the Google Play Store. But there's something crazy like, 16 million, 60 million, I don't know how many it is, but there's a huge amount of people who are using Android phones and who like to read books on their phones. And so if your book's not available in the Google Play Store, which is something you have to submit individually, because it's not even available through Draft to Digital. So you have to be willing to do the distribution. And again, distribution is boring. right? It's boring. Like, getting all that sort of set up. And authors don't often think about a lot of that, but we do. And yes, we do provide as much marketing or as little marketing
I
as people
just
will allow us.
learned so much about where my book isn't.
Oh yeah. Like, let's talk after this and I will
I
make
just
sure.
learned all these places my books are not
I
listed.
could probably increase your book sales about 30% with a
Oh,
10-minute
wow, we're gonna
conversation.
have that conversation. It's funny because there is a category on here, under publication where it was about getting the book more widely distributed, and I
Yep.
do see your name listed here. So BizBook Publishing Hub, we have, under publishing, the publishing tab. If you go to bizbookpublishinghub.com and scroll down to publishing tab, ebook distribution, extended ebook distribution, Apple Books, Nook, Kobo, etc. And yes, you are listed as one of the people will help make that happen because getting, like you said, just getting it to Amazon is like, I focus on that initial few, like I would say 30 days or so
Yep.
of life on Amazon, and particularly the Kindle book, because
Yep.
you can lower the book price and you can
You
focus
can
your
give it away for
your
free, get
launch
a lot of
team,
reviews. Yeah.
get those verified reviews. But beyond that, I think single sales is not the goal. It's about bulk sales. But you do want to have people be able to stumble across your content in whatever format they're looking for it, in whatever platform they're looking for it. So I think that's a thing. Anyone who maybe already has a
Yeah.
book, this is another thing to do, is now
Yeah.
that your book's out there and like the dust has settled, you might want to
Go wide.
consider, how do we do further market reach
Yeah, go
distribution?
wide. And if your book is not appropriately placed in libraries, there's huge opportunities there. And it's never too late. Like, if you wrote your book 5 years ago, it's not too late. If your book makes sense to be distributed to colleges and universities as a potential reading for courses, then you should be looking at Vital Source, or like, there are a lot of ways to get books into hands. And honestly, Amazon is just ante into the game. It's the beginning of the
Yeah.
distribution
And it's
process.
a good place to start because people still, they own a large part of the market as far as
Sure.
where people go to look. And also, I say, like, I focus on reviews, particularly on Amazon to start with,
Yeah.
because people hiring you to do speaking,
They go look for it. Yeah.
or to invite you to be on a podcast, they're going to glance to
Yeah.
see how your
Agreed.
book's doing on Amazon. And even if they
Agreed.
don't buy it on Amazon, they're going to be like, oh, is this person legitimate? And that just
Right.
one of the places that they'll look. And if you can control that to some degree by
Yeah.
having a great book description, having editorial reviews showing, having some sales that your
Yep.
book's not sitting there at number 2 million all Kindle, and you can have reviews which will stay on the book site, the sales page, long after.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is, I think, the soup to nuts piece of this for you, how you're able to support people from conception to this really positive outcome, the questions you're asking along the way. Is there a particular outcome that an author of yours had that was really remarkable? That they nailed this process so well that this amazing opportunity came to them?
Oh gosh. There've been so many. We have 250 authors at this point. You know, I definitely we've definitely seen a lot of folks step on really big stages, at massive conferences, keynoting, industry events. At this will sound a little bit selfish, but of course, knowing all that I know about promoting a book, of course, you can imagine how I work on my own books. And so sometimes my own work ends up being sort of the example to my other clients. And I would say my most recent book um, blew my mind in terms of its success. But my co-author and I worked really, really, really hard to make that happen. And so we had phenomenal publicists. We just spoke at South by Southwest. We've had, I think the book has released in 3 or 4 custom editions where organizations have paid to put, have their logo added to it, and a custom forward by their CEO, and, bought thousands of copies for their stakeholders for their conferences. And so we've had a whole lot of success. I've been in, we had a feature length story in Forbes written about our book. And so we've seen a lot of that. And we've just, we've seen a lot of our authors get really interesting opportunities for their businesses, where people are picking up the phone and saying, hey, I read your book. And we're wondering, do you provide this kind of consulting services to businesses or whatnot? And so we've definitely had a lot of clients who have told us that And this comes back to something you had said a minute ago, Robbie, that sometimes people don't even know what's possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, they write a book that's got all kinds of really great advice for executives, for example, and then their phone rings, and it's the president of, somebody in an industry they may have some expertise in, and they're saying, do you provide coaching to presidents in Fortune 500 companies or whatnot? And that author is thinking, well, I don't, but I could, right? Or it's not on my website, yes, but it should be. And so, getting that phone to ring is a really phenomenal thing. And we hear those stories over and over and over again about, you're not going to believe what happened. And that's really, really exciting.
So a couple of things to pull from that. One is you have to write a good book.
Yeah.
You have to have a book that also has an intended audience.
Yeah.
And you have to get your book in front of and read by your intended audience. Like, if you can nail those 3 steps,
Right.
then other things come that you wouldn't have thought of. Like, I mean, I hear these examples too all the time
Yeah.
from the authors who do well. Part of what happens is something unexpected becomes an opportunity. Now a lot of times new authors, they're aiming to hit #1 Amazon bestseller. That's to them the greatest glory. They're like going to pay money for it. They're so excited. It does nothing to their bottom line.
Yep.
There's no new revenue in their bank account. They may actually have their bank account drained by
Yep.
some company that is going to charge them a lot of money to make that happen. So, but that's their initial, like, how they think of success. But when
Yeah.
they do it well, then suddenly they're getting those phones to ring. They're getting invitations to speak on big stages. They're getting asked to do executive coaching when they'd never really done that. Like,
Right. And they're
it
able
just
to
becomes
change their
weird.
prices too, right? So when
Uh,
it's one thing to be the person who wrote the book on it, but whenever we can all say that about ourselves when we write a book. But if other people are saying that about you, if people are saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the hot book in our industry," or, people keep telling me about this book, this is really amazing. And then you come up to those folks and you tell them what your price is for coaching, consulting, speaking. You can level up your fees pretty significantly if people are really impressed by what you've done in that book, right? But if
mhm.
people open your book and it's really generic, and what you've said is not that unique, and there's nothing, you don't have a really interesting take or perspective on something, you're going to suffer. So, I mean, my advice, to all authors and would-be authors is really simple. I mean, it's all the things you just said, and I would distill it down into, when it comes to the book, do it well or don't do it at all. Like, really, it would be worse to write a bad book than to not write a book. So do it well or don't do it all, and don't be a sucker. And by don't be a sucker, I mean, like, it breaks my heart, but there are predatory publishing companies out there. I acquired one of them. So several years ago, there was a publishing company in Texas, and they had done some horrible things, and they were falling apart, and they were sort of taking their authors' money, and then the books were not getting distributed, or people would show up at their speaking gig and they thought the publisher sent copies of the book, and there was supposed to be one on every chair, and it was in the contract with the speaking venue, and the books were not there, and all kinds of things were happening. And so ultimately, these authors started calling me and saying, can you help me? Can you call this publishing company and help us? And so I started trying to rescue books one at a time, calling the CEO of this other publishing company. And finally, I don't know if I've ever talked about this publicly, but I finally just picked up the phone for the umpteenth time to the CEO who kept signing contracts and then taking advantage of people. And I called him and I said, you have 2 choices. And I said, you can go down in history as a guy who started a small publishing company, who worked with some authors and had some success and decided to do something else and sold his company. And I said, or you can be a guy who started a small publishing company, exploited people in a horrible way, hurt people horribly, financially and otherwise, and got sued in a class action lawsuit and had to go bankrupt. And I said, those are your 2 choices. I said, I'm willing to buy your company. Are you willing to talk?
Mm.
And so it was essentially a hostile takeover of his company. And we saved all of these authors. And now they're part of our family here, and we've taken really good care of them. And I'll never forget when I picked up the phone and I called the folks at Ingram, which is the world's largest book distributor, as you know. And I said, I've purchased this publishing company. We need access to their full library of books that are distributed through you. How do we move them from their account into our account? Because I don't want to manage multiple accounts. And they said there are so many small publishing companies disappearing, fly by night, going out of business, like on the daily, that we just have a form, that there's a process to just move it, boom, boom. And so I had the CEO whose company I was buying sign that form. I filled it out, and they wholesale sucked everything from their thing. And they said they have a process because they have publishing companies going out of business every day.
I think what's a lesson to hear from that is don't get into the publishing business lightly.
No,
Like, this is a commitment. You want to publish your own book?
go for it.
Great.
Yeah,
Like,
self-publish your own stuff.
you
Yeah,
want to help a friend, navigate the process because you've learned a thing or two? Cool.
yeah,
But building out a whole, like hanging a shingle and taking people's money, that's a whole social commitment that you
yeah,
have to follow through on. And it's not light, and it doesn't end. Like, it's not like your responsibilities really end if you're publishing.
yeah.
So it's interesting because I recently learned the term assisted self-publishing, and we
Mhm.
have a section on the Hub directory called assisted self-publishing.
Yeah,
And to me, the Venn diagram between hybrid publishing and assisted self-publishing overlaps quite
yeah,
a bit.
yeah,
But it's also, I feel like, clear in the assisted self-publishing world what
yeah.
that person's responsibility is.
Right.
They're there to help you navigate the publishing process. Your book gets published,
Yeah.
and then it's yours. You do
Right.
what you want with. But when it's a publisher, even a hybrid publisher, there's even an implicit expectation of there being a different kind of relationship. So maybe you
Absolutely.
don't want to be a publisher. Maybe you should just be an assisted self-publisher.
Right, that's exactly it, because, yeah, be careful what you wish for if you decide to get into the
So
publishing
true.
world. In fact, I'm not afraid to admit I hired a phenomenal brand marketing consultancy years ago to help me think about my companies and my brands, and sort of where I wanted to go from here. And much of what we sketched out during those strategy sessions have come to pass for me, which is really exciting. But the number one pain point I went to them was, I started this publishing company to help this one author, and then I ended up buying another publishing company, and we got really, really, really big. And I wanted this to be a side business because my real love is market research and writing. And now it's taking up 80% of my time. And now what do I do? And so I've worked really hard to actually scale back. So there was a period of time where Silver Tree Publishing was more prolific in terms of the number of books we were putting out every year than Crown Books, which is the business book division of Random House. And so we had to figure out how to get smaller. And so several years ago, we became a no new friends publishing company, meaning we stopped and the full service publishing side, we stopped taking on new authors. So we now only represent, so we do assisted self-publishing for new authors, but for full service publishing, we only publish authors who have already published another book with us, because we have so many people who are working on their second or third or fourth book. That will keep me busy for the rest of my life. And I liken it to owning a publishing company is sort of like running a high school if you got new freshmen every year, but no one graduated. So your stable of authors just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Because even after a book comes out, folks might need something from you. They might decide to go wide with their distribution. They might decide to do some sort of new marketing. They want to build a new website. They need help with publicity. They want to do a second edition of their book. They need bulk books ordered for an event. And so we end up sort of the care and feeding of those authors really never goes away.
Right.
It is the one, as I'm looking towards my own retirement, which is actually coming up very soon. I'm in the process of trying to figure out, do I just continue to run the publishing company, even though I'm technically retired, or do I bring on a sort of a COO or something to go ahead and run it for me? Because they're impossible to sort of shut down, right? Because you're never going to abandon the authors that you
Right.
exist to serve. Or I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't.
Well, and this is again, this distinction between assisted self-publishing and being a hybrid publisher or publishing house, and that
Yeah.
you could still use your expertise to get
Right.
people to a point, and
Yep.
but they're publishing under their own imprint, their own ISBN. They have the KDP login access.
Yep.
So if they want to order bulk books later on, they can order them. Like, what I mean? This is a difference between, and some hybrid publishers
Yeah.
have this distinction in house. Like,
Yeah.
there's certain books they take as an imprint of their own and they do a lot more with. And then others, it's really just a pay to support them through the
Exactly.
publishing process. I
Exactly.
just don't think enough people thinking about hiring a hybrid publisher understand
Yeah,
these distinctions.
they don't.
And the word hybrid publisher, it's just, I don't know, it's so broad to mean almost nothing in some ways, and
Yeah,
yet we all have a sense of what it means. So it's like it's
yeah,
sort of like it's difficult because a
right.
new person to this world would not know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
I
yeah,
wanted to shift us here to the hub, because I think
yeah,
one of the reasons to know about the hub is folks like you now have other connections. And I've heard you share some stories about the hub before, and I appreciate that. I'm wondering how you've approached using the BizBook Publishing Hub. There's more than 50 hub partners, and these are all experts through some part of the author journey: writing, editing, publishing, marketing. Some, like you, are more of a full service, from the writing process all the way to the publishing, maybe also the marketing. But some are just individual contributors, like
yeah,
graphic designers, editors. We need those people who specialize in something, and sometimes you need to hire them for a project,
correct.
because you're, graphic designers on a honeymoon, and you're like, oops, I need somebody, right? So some
Yeah.
of that's happening, but I think it's been really interesting to hear how partners have been sort of networking and referring to each other, and using the hub to support their prospects and their clients. So how have you been interacting with other hub partners, with the hub, coming to our events? Like, what's been your experience?
So, I would say in all the ways, and in ways that have surprised me. But I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago, because I don't want to lose it, because I think your listeners
Mhm.
need to hear this. When you're interviewing potential publishing partners to help you publish your book, you should be asking them to define. So if their website says that they're a hybrid publisher, one of your first questions should be, talk to me about what you mean by hybrid.
Yes.
How do you think about that hybrid approach? Or how do you think about collaborative publishing? In what ways is this a collaboration? Or I see that you use the word assisted. So tell me, how much assistance versus how much DIY? Those are the key questions you should be asking when you're vetting publishing companies. And don't always feel like you need to fall in love with the first one. It's probably the third or fourth or fifth one. In terms of the hub, man, I love what you've built here. I mean, I really love what you've built. It's so amazing. um, I have been surprised every time that I've gone to a hub event that I get to wear multiple hats, and I get to benefit sort of in multiple ways. So, the hub allows me to be an author and to get advice as an author from other publishing experts who know things that I don't know and who have connections that I don't have. But it also lets me be a publisher and connect in with the right talents that tuck into what my business does. And so I always walk away from all of these events with really great, sort of inspiring ideas for myself and for my clients. It is really common that I will go to one of your events, or I'll hear from somebody from the hub through LinkedIn or whatnot, and it'll give me one of their brilliant ideas, and then I'll turn around and I'll go Facebook Live in our author forum or something and tell our authors this cool idea that I got from the hub, right? And so I try to amplify what I'm learning there to others. It's also creating work-life balance for me. I mentioned that I'm working towards a semi-retirement in the coming months, and now I have what I didn't have before. So what some people might know is that in 2020, I was one of the very unfortunate many people who got very, very sick with COVID at the very beginning. I contracted COVID in March 2020, the week that the pandemic was declared. And I was in medical isolation for 68 days, and I was horribly sick and very, very close to not surviving it. And I had to pick up the phone, and I could barely speak, and I had to call two of my competitors and ask them, "Would you take our pipeline?" And I needed to find out, how do you do it differently? Do I trust your process is similar enough to mine that I feel comfortable giving you all my clients? And we jettisoned our entire pipeline and our current business to our competitors. And it was overwhelming to be that sick and to not know where to start, right? I'm like vetting these people, and I can barely speak, and I had a fever and I had pneumonia, and it was horrific. Now, as if something horrible were to happen, or as I'm looking at retirement, I have the Rolodex. Like I know these folks now because of you. And I've had the opportunity to really sort of see what they're made of, and understand what services they provide. And so I know who to refer my clients to. And that's been really amazing. So, I've recently been able to send a lot of folks over to the hub, which is really exciting. And selfishly, I've also gotten some really great connections. Somebody in your hub just recently, I was asking about Amazon ads the other day, and somebody in your hub is like, "Oh, you've got to know so and so. They're like an Amazon ad guru." And somebody in the hub connected me to somebody who is outside of the hub, I think, and it was a really, really great connection that was made instantaneously because of that conversation. And so there is power in that community. And so I'm super grateful to you for building this. I suspect you had no idea how amazing this was going to be when you got the idea to do this. And I am really grateful to you for everything you have done to just keep plussing this up to make it more and more and more, because I think the world ends up with better books because of what you've built here.
I think you were one of the first like batch of people that I
Yeah.
talked to back in, I'm actually like looking at my calendar right now, but back in early 2024, I was really trying to vet this idea and figure out what it could be. And we had a conversation as early as November. So it was just a fleeting idea. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like, I'm thinking of moving in this direction. I don't know what people need. What's the market looking like right now? In December, I really got serious about it, and I started doing research calls. I think I did like 12 between December and January, which is an awkward time of year to do those. But I managed it. People
Yeah.
were still happy to get on a call with me. And I had just run my first Kindle cross promotion campaign around Black Friday in November. And it wasn't about making money, right? It was just like testing my reach to authors.
Yeah.
And I unexpectedly made $15,000 in December. And I know it was unexpected because I had to call my accountant and give her new numbers for the end of year. And suddenly I owed a lot more in taxes. So good problems to have, I have
Good
to
problem
say.
to have.
But I was like, ooh, I want to do more of that. Like, I want to do like this no pressure offer service, get the right leads. And so I was trying to vet two questions on my little research tour. Is my launch approach of how I focus on getting Amazon reviews and building launch teams of prospects and referral partners to create a pipeline, is that unique? And then the second question was, did a referral network that I was seeking already exist? Because I'm happy to just be plugged in, right? Well, by mid-January, I had gotten enough information that people were like, your process makes complete sense, but yeah, I don't do that. Like, I don't want to be in charge of that. My authors would love that. I don't have anybody to send to help them figure that out. I talked to PR agencies during that time who also said, yeah, people pay us and we book them on shows, but they only have 7 reviews. I'm like, actually, it's 7 ratings, 4 reviews, and one of them is from a relative. I was like saying the truth.
Let's not kid ourselves. They're all from relatives.
Yeah, they're all from relatives. So it's just, to me, I was like, oh, I was thinking 8 to 12 people in a little referral network. That was my original thought.
Yeah.
And you just follow the thread, and now we've created this whole ecosystem. We have the hub, which is a directory, which is a little overwhelming still. I mean, like, I think as an author, you go there and what you learn is, wow, there's things I didn't know I had to know about. Like, that's useful. But I think when you start digging through and scheduling chats with some of the partners, that's way you start to find your people, because every partner specializes in some way on the kinds of authors they work with. But now we've got these events. So every other month, there's a free virtual networking event for writers and authors. And now we start doing this podcast, which has been great. And then we're going to continue doing this twice a year Kindle cross promotion campaign. And the VIP authors for the campaign are the authors in the panel. So it's like, I mean, none of this existed, I'm going to say 6 months ago.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly you've built it, which is really fascinating to me. You must never sleep.
I heard that a lot in 2020 when my business had to turn on a dime again. I think I've learned the process of reinvention, and I vetted 3 ideas at the June to December of last year, and this is the one that caught, right? And this is the one that I kept doing because I was getting affirmations from people. And I used to take, I don't know, a year plus to try to vet ideas. Like I just felt like I was wandering in the desert a lot longer. And now it's like, 8 to 12 weeks to figure out whether there's a thread. And this is what I work with my coaching clients on. It's like, I can't
Yeah.
tell you that your idea is good, but you'll know within 3 months.
Right.
Like, that's my promise. You're not going to waste time. And if it
Right.
doesn't work, you'll hopefully find a new pathway forward.
Well, that's it takes me back to my business school days, right? Is this idea of the MVP, the minimum viable
Yeah.
product, right? And that's what you've done, is that you said, okay, well, minimally, what do I have to put together to put something out in the marketplace and test it and see if it works? And I think a lot of people, that whole perfection is the enemy of done. You've worked your way to a perfection of this, and then you keep leveling it up to something else and expanding it to more things, which is really exciting. But you didn't let the idea be so big and overwhelming that you didn't move on it. It's amazing to me when you said something about November. I'm like, I can't believe it's been less than a year since you started talking about this and then executed on it in the way that you've executed on it. Like
it was last October of 23 when my mentor, Dory Clark, my friend, mentor, and sometimes coach, we were having dinner with a bunch of people in New York City, and I was okay. So jokingly, I was groaning about the fact that my last book, which at that time was 6 months old, was stuck at 249 reviews, and I wanted it to be over 250, so I could just say over 250. Like, I was trying to be really specific in my marketing and my speak, and I was joking about this because clearly that's a good problem. And she sort of just very plainly said, "Why are you not a book launch coach?" And I was like, "You've asked me this 3 or 4 times." And I had reasons why I didn't want to do it 7 years ago when I was trying to establish myself in other ways. But now you're right. I've done this. I'm 3 books, a collective of like 650 reviews. I clearly have a process. I've done this with people sort of ad hoc as they've asked. And literally start to just have some, I basically was like, who do I know in this world? And that's why you and I had a conversation, right? It's like, who do I know who does a little of this? And you start to realize, oh my gosh, I know a lot of people in this world, and they all know good people. So everyone in the hub is one removed max. It's like either I knew them or someone in the hub vetted for them, and then we met. And I haven't hired them all, so I can't tell you I love how they do what they do.
Right.
I will tell you that no one's permanently in the hub if I get bad feedback. But I want it to be a community. So I love how you've been interacting, because that's really important to me. And over time, I may actually thin out the directory, because if hub partners aren't engaging, then I don't want it to just be a thing that they like signed up for and it's a piece of paper and like they forgot about it. Like, I want us to be a real community, because there's so much more we learn from each other that way.
Yeah. And listen, and there are industries that have standards like that, right? So like, if I think about different sort of medical sort of associations, right? Doctors who are trained in very specific types of, medical techniques, and that are sort of like, you can go to that professional association's website and you can find out which of these doctors goes to the conference every year, which one maintains their continuing medical education on this topic. And those are the ones you should choose, right? And so I love that idea of saying, the people who are really, really into this, like, those are the ones who should be highlighted, the ones that, are really, doing the work.
It's great. Well, we're about to ask the wrap-up question, which is going to be any advice you have for someone writing a book to help them grow a business that you haven't already addressed or you want to reiterate. But first, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Kate, wrap it up for us. Put a little bow on it. What's the sort of final thought you'd have for someone who's listening in, who's getting ready to write a book to help them grow a business?
I think that you have to really dedicate yourself to the writing part. And I know a lot of folks say, but I have this idea, or I'm not a writer, but I'm, an expert financial planner, or whatever your book is about. And I have this really unique thing and whatever. But at the end of the day, people have to read it. Right? It has to be interesting, and you have to figure out, how do you draw people from sentence to sentence and page to page and chapter to chapter. So the organization of the content needs to make sense, and it needs to be compelling, and what you're actually saying needs to make sense, and it needs to be compelling. And so I would remind people something that maybe one of your English professors told you in college, or something that somebody told you in high school. And if they didn't, shame on all of those English teachers. And I'm allowed to say that as somebody who used to be an English teacher. that the word revision, a lot of people don't remember what this means or even realize what it means. But think about if I was holding up a dry erase board for you right now and I grabbed a pen and I wrote RE hyphen VISION and asked you to define it. Envision means to see, re means again. Take a look at your outline, your first draft, the few chapters you've put together, and ask yourself, how could I see this totally anew? And does that mean chapter 6 need to be where chapter 2 is? Does it mean chapter 7 needs to be killed? Does it mean that this blog post I wrote yesterday needs to be in the book? And how do you start thinking about the content of your book with totally fresh eyes? And you have to be willing to trash what you've written and start over. Anybody who tells you that it's exciting or amazing to write a book in 6 weeks or whatever else, that's just not true. Or, we'll get you a bestseller status on, some tiny little category. Again, don't be a sucker. When you write a book and you want to write a stellar book, it's not about speed and it's not about being cute. It's about doing it well. Hold yourself to really high standards.
If we had titles for our show still, this one would be Don't Be a Sucker. Hey, speaking of which, how can people find you and follow your work?
Well, of course, they can find me on the hub, but easy to find me on LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/in/Kate Colbert. You can find my 2 business books at thinklikeamarketer.thebook.com and commencementthebook.com.
Amazing. We're going to put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com, which is where you'll find the hub directory, invitations to come to those free virtual networking events I mentioned earlier, as well as all of these show notes. I mean, this has been just a stellar conversation, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
So much fun. Thank you.